Hello, everyone. Today we are going to listen to a very special story from the Bible. It is the story of Esther. And as we begin, there is something important to remember. In this story, God's name is not directly spoken, but His work is happening in every moment. Even when people are making their own choices, God is quietly guiding everything. So let's go to the beginning. Long ago, there was a king named Ahasuerus. He ruled over a very large empire, from India all the way to Ethiopia. The Bible tells us he ruled over 127 provinces. He lived in the royal city of Susa, where there was a great palace. In the third year of his reign, King Ahasuerus gave a great feast. He invited his officials, his army, and the leaders of the provinces. The Bible says he showed them the riches of his kingdom and the splendor of his greatness. This feast lasted for many days. After that, he gave another feast for all the people in the citadel of Susa, from the greatest to the least. At the same time, Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women in the royal palace. On the seventh day of the feast, when the king's heart was merry with wine, he gave a command. He told his servants to bring Queen Vashti before him, wearing her royal crown. The Bible tells us why. It says, "For she was lovely to look at." The king wanted to show her beauty to the people and the officials. But then, something happened. The Bible says very simply, Queen Vashti refused to come. She did not obey the king's command. This moment is very important. The king had shown his power, his wealth, and everything he owned. And now, when he gave a command, it was not followed. The Bible says the king became very angry. His anger burned within him. So the king spoke to the wise men who understood the laws of the kingdom. He asked them what should be done. One of them said that Queen Vashti had not only wronged the king, but also all the people in the kingdom, because if others heard about this, they might also begin to show disrespect. So he gave this advice. Queen Vashti should no longer come before the king, and her royal position should be given to someone else. The king accepted this advice, and a decree was sent throughout the kingdom. Queen Vashti was removed as queen. But while all of this was happening, something else was also happening. Not in the palace, not in the feast, not in the king's decisions, but in the unseen work of God. After Queen Vashti was removed, the palace was left without a queen. The king's command had gone out across the empire, but now there was an empty place in the royal house. And as this was happening, no one could see it yet. But God was already continuing His work, preparing what would come next. After these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus had calmed down, his servants made a suggestion. They said that beautiful young women should be gathered from all the provinces of the kingdom and brought to the palace. Each one would be prepared, and then they would be presented before the king, and the one who pleased the king would become the new queen. So officers were appointed, and young women were gathered from all over the empire. They were brought to the citadel of Susa and placed under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the women. Each woman was given beauty treatments for many months, just as the custom required. Now there was a Jewish girl whose name was Esther. She was the daughter of Mordecai's uncle, and after her father and mother died, Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter and raised her. Esther was brought to the palace along with the other young women. The Bible says that she pleased Hegai and found favor in his sight. So he quickly gave her beauty treatments and special food, and he chose servants to attend to her. She was moved to the best place in the house of the women. But there was something important that Mordecai had told her. He instructed Esther not to reveal her people or her family background. And Esther obeyed Mordecai, just as she had done when she was brought up by him. Day after day, Mordecai walked near the court of the women's house to learn how Esther was doing and what was happening to her. Even though Esther was inside the palace, she was not alone. God was still working, even through these quiet, unseen moments. Each young woman would go in turn to the king. After months of preparation, she would enter the king's presence in the evening, and in the morning she would return. This continued until it was Esther's turn. When the time came for Esther to go to the king, she did not ask for anything except what Haggai advised. And the Bible tells us something very important. It says that Esther found favor in the eyes of all who saw her. Then Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus, and when the king saw her, he loved Esther more than all the other women. She obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the others. So the king placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king gave a great feast for all his officials and servants. It was called Esther's Feast. He also granted relief to the provinces and gave gifts according to his royal generosity. At this point in the story, many things seem to be happening because of people's decisions. A king is choosing, servants are gathering, people are preparing. But behind all of this, God is still working. Because now in the palace of Persia, the queen is no longer Vashti, the queen is Esther. And no one in the palace knows that she is part of God's people. At that time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. This was a place where officials would gather, where matters of the kingdom were discussed, and where those who served the king often stayed. While he was there, 2 of the king's officers became angry. They were doorkeepers, men who had access to the king's presence. These men began to plot something very serious. They planned to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. In other words, they were planning to harm the king. Mordecai heard about this plot. The Bible does not tell us exactly how he heard it, but it clearly says that the matter became known to him. This moment may have seemed small. One man overhearing something, one conversation in a crowded place. But even in this quiet moment, something important was happening. Mordecai chose to act. He told Queen Esther about the plot, and Esther in turn spoke to the king. But when she told the king, she gave credit to Mordecai. She made it clear that this information had come from him. The king ordered an investigation. The matter was examined carefully, and the Bible says that the plot was found to be true. The 2 men were punished, and the danger was removed. Then something else happened, something very important. The event was written down in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king. In other words, it was recorded in the royal records. At that moment, nothing else seemed to happen. Mordecai was not rewarded right away. There was no celebration, no announcement, no special honor given to him. It may have seemed like the moment had passed, but the record remained. And this is where we begin to see something deeper. And as the story continues, someone new begins to rise in power. His name was Haman. After these things, King Ahasuerus honored Haman the Agagite and gave him a very high position. The king placed him above all the other officials, and he became one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. Because of this, the king gave a command that all the king's servants at the gate were to bow down and pay honor to Haman whenever he passed by. So day after day, people bowed low before him, showing him respect as they had been commanded. But there was one man who did not bow, Mordecai. The Bible says clearly that Mordecai did not bow down or pay him honor. The other servants at the gate noticed this and asked him again and again, "Why do you break the king's command?" But Mordecai would not listen to them. He had told them that he was a Jew, and because of this, he would not give that kind of honor to a man. So while everyone else bowed down, Mordecai remained standing in his place. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him honor, he was filled with anger. But when he learned that Mordecai was a Jew, his anger grew even greater. He thought it was too small a thing to harm Mordecai alone. So Haman began to look for a way to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai, throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. And what began with one man choosing to stand was now becoming something much bigger, a growing danger that would soon affect all of God's people. And as Haman's anger continued to grow, it began to turn into a plan. He was no longer thinking only about Mordecai, but about something much greater and much more destructive. The Bible tells us that Haman spoke with his wife Zeresh and all his friends. He told them about his power, his wealth, and how the king had honored him above all others. Yet all of this meant nothing to him as long as he saw Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate and refusing to bow. His anger had completely taken over his heart. So his wife and his friends gave him advice. They said, "Let a gallows be made, 50 cubits high, and in the morning ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. Then go with the king to the feast and enjoy yourself." This idea pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. This was not just a simple tool. It was built high so that everyone could see it. A gallows like this was meant to be a public display, a way to show power, fear, and punishment. It was meant to send a message to others, to say that no one should dare to stand against Haman. And as the gallows was being prepared, Haman was already imagining the moment when Mordecai would be placed upon it. Everything seemed to be going exactly the way he wanted. His plan was moving forward, and his heart was filled with confidence. And as Haman's plan moved forward, the danger reached Mordecai. When he learned about the decree that all the Jews would be destroyed, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and he went out into the city, crying with a loud and bitter cry. Throughout the provinces, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and lamenting. When Esther heard what Mordecai was doing, she was deeply distressed, and she sent garments for him to wear, but he would not accept them. So she sent a messenger to find out what was happening. Mordecai then told her everything, including the decree to destroy the Jews, and he asked her to go to the king and plead for her people. But Esther hesitated. She sent word back saying that anyone who goes to the king without being called risks death, unless the king holds out the golden scepter. And she had not been called for 30 days. Then Mordecai sent this message to Esther, that she should not think she would escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if she kept silent, relief and deliverance would arise for the Jews from another place, but she and her father's house would perish. And who knows whether she had come to the kingdom for such a time as this. When Esther heard this, something changed. She sent back her answer and said for Mordecai to gather all the Jews in Susa and fast for her for 3 days, night and day. And she and her young women would fast as well, and then she would go to the king, though it was against the law, and if she perished, she would perish. So Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther had commanded him. After the 3 days, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace. When the king saw her, she found favor in his sight, and he held out the golden scepter to her. Then Esther approached and touched the top of the scepter, and the king asked her what she wished, even up to half the kingdom. But Esther did not reveal everything at once. Instead, she invited the king and Haman to a banquet that she had prepared. And so the king and Haman came to the first feast, not yet knowing what was about to be revealed. And as the story continues, the moment of truth finally arrives at the second banquet. Esther had already invited the king and Haman once, and now they came again to the feast she had prepared. As they were drinking wine, the king asked Esther once more what her request was, promising to grant it even up to half the kingdom. This time Esther spoke. She said that if she had found favor in the king's sight, she asked for her life and for the lives of her people. She explained that they had been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. The king was shocked and said, "Who is he, and where is he, who has dared to do this?" Then Esther answered and said, "A foe and enemy, this wicked Haman." At that moment, everything changed. Haman was terrified before the king and queen because he had never expected this. He had not known that Esther was a Jew because she had never revealed her people or her family. The king rose in his wrath and went out into the palace garden, his anger burning within him. But Haman stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for his life, for he saw that harm had been determined against him by the king. When the king returned from the garden, he saw Haman falling on the couch where Esther was. Then the king said, "Will he even assault the queen in my presence, in my own house?" As the words left the king's mouth, the servants covered Haman's face. And in that moment, the king's anger reached its peak, and the judgment that Haman had never expected was now about to fall upon him. And as the king's anger reached its peak, one of the king's servants spoke up and said that a gallows 50 cubits high had already been prepared by Haman for Mordecai, the very man who had spoken good for the king and helped save his life. The king heard this and immediately gave a command, saying, "Hang him on it." Without delay, Haman was taken away. The same gallows that he had built with pride and confidence, expecting to see Mordecai destroyed upon it, now stood as the place of his own judgment. In a moment, everything was reversed. The plan he had carefully prepared, the power he had been given, and the honor he had once enjoyed were all taken from him. The Bible tells us that Haman was hanged on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. And in that moment, the king's anger was quieted. What Haman had intended for harm returned upon himself. The place meant to bring fear to others became the place where his own life ended. And though Haman was now gone and his plans had come to an end, something still remained unfinished. The decree that had been sent throughout the kingdom could not be undone, and the danger over God's people had not yet passed, so the story was not over yet. And as the story continues, even though Haman was gone, the danger was not yet over. The decree that had been sent out could not simply be canceled, because according to the laws of the Medes and Persians, a royal command could not be reversed. So Esther went again before the king, falling at his feet and pleading with tears that the evil plan of Haman against the Jews might be stopped. The king then extended the golden scepter to Esther, and she rose and stood before him. Instead of removing the first decree, the king gave a new command. He allowed the Jews throughout the kingdom to gather and defend their lives, to stand together against anyone who would attack them. Letters were written in the king's name and sent out quickly to all the provinces, giving the Jews permission to protect themselves on the appointed day. When Mordecai left the king's presence, he was dressed in royal robes of blue and white, with a great crown of gold, and the city of Susa rejoiced and was glad. And for the Jews there was light and gladness, joy and honor. When the day came, the Jews stood firm and defended themselves, and no one could stand against them, because fear had fallen upon their enemies. What had been planned for destruction became a day of victory. Sorrow was turned into joy, and mourning into celebration. And throughout the kingdom, many rejoiced with the Jews. In the palace and in the city, there was great joy, and the people honored Esther, the queen who had risked her life for her people. And through all of this, even though his name was not spoken, God had been working from the very beginning, guiding each moment, protecting his people, and bringing everything to this ending filled with life, joy, and victory. And as the story comes to an end, there is something very important for us to remember. In the book of Esther, the name of God is not mentioned even once, not a single time. And yet, as we look back at everything that happened, we begin to see something clearly. Nothing happened by accident. Everything came together at just the right time. On the night when the king could not sleep, the royal records were opened. At that exact moment, the name of Mordecai was read. At that same time, Haman had already entered the court. Esther's banquets were not random, but perfectly timed. Each moment, each decision, each event was connected in a way that no one could fully see at the time. The Bible calls this God's providence. It means that even when we cannot see him, God is still working, guiding history, and moving every piece into place. The story of Esther is not only about a brave queen. It is about how one person can be used in God's greater plan. Esther did not know everything that would happen, but when the time came, she chose to step forward in courage. And through her, God brought deliverance to His people. In the same way, there may be times when we do not understand what is happening in our lives. We may not see clearly, and we may not hear God's name spoken out loud. But that does not mean He is absent. Just like in Esther's story, He is working quietly, faithfully, and perfectly. And perhaps, just like Esther, we are where we are for a reason, for a moment prepared long before we could see it.